Yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about. Let's talk about this. Talk about that. Talk about things. Talk about facts. Let's talk about living. Talk about this. Talk about it.
We're my sisters, we got this sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. Substance, ho, sis. You know we on a mission, no change. Help each other get over
Things they change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. The right wills. Love heals.
Hey!
Stands. Everything we can.
Come on,
Just show we understand
the power of a friendship, fam.
It's life on purpose. We don't want to see you hurt and be here for each other.
No matter the color, networking. Hey! Oh, yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship. We're my sisters, we got this sisters. You roll with me and I roll with ya. We're my sisters, come on, y'all. You roll with me and I roll with ya. We got a brother over here.
We got it now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Sister ship, we got it.
this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
About this,
Sister
talk
ship, we
about
got
that.
this now. Come on, let's
Hey.
talk about it.
Talk about giving. Hey,
We on the sister ship. We on the sister ship.
I didn't know you were coming to party.
All right.
That's why we're going to show start.
Happy blessed Sunday, everybody. Happy blessed Sunday. This is your Sistership Network right here in Genesis Radio Studio. We have such an amazing topic today because we're back in school, right?
Yes.
School's done started, in some states just starting, some states already started. And it's such an important discussion that we want to have around education and then pretty much our current state of affairs. So much has changed in the last year and a half. And we want to just really be educated on the subject because there's so many people that really don't know what transpired over the course of the last year and a half, how things have changed, how things have evolved, what happened, how do we manage through it. So this is something we definitely want to make sure we talk about. With that said, I need to obviously introduce our amazing panel here because without them, we wouldn't have education where it's at today. So let's talk about, we got Trenae Lurie, Diversity Coach for East Stroudsburg School District, Dean of Students of Lehman Intermediate School. Welcome. Trenae.
Thank you.
Trenae, we can't wait to have this discussion because we were having some pre-discussions because we start getting to talking and forget we have a show coming up. So, and then we're gonna have Rhonda Footman, teacher with Commonwealth Charter Academy, adjunct for Northampton Community College and Penn State University. Some of my friends on the and also the founder of Tree of Life Education Center online tutoring service, which, hello. Let's talk about online students. Okay. With that said, also John Gerkart, did I say that correctly? Yes. He is the committee man for the District 6 Stroud Township. We are so blessed to have you on board as well today. Thank you so much.
Welcome, John. Welcome.
Welcome, John. And I am your girl, Stephia of the Sistership Network, Queen of Bling. And we've got Tiffany.
I'm your girl, Bling.
And of course, Genesis Radio, Terry, right there helping us out on the making sure that we got everything working technically. But with that said, we want to kind of, again, getting into the discussion, I think the biggest thing is really to understand where we are today, is to understand how it all started. And we know everybody's talking about it, COVID, right? I mean, it's the elephant in the room sometimes. But you know, we have to understand like what changed because it was immediate.
It was.
It was immediate. Like, you know,
Went to
came
work and they said,
in
"Don't come tomorrow."
Boom,
Exactly.
That was it. Shut down.
Yeah.
Yep.
March of 2000.
March
what,
13th,
March
2020 was a Friday.
Yeah,
Friday
the
the
whole
13th.
day.
And I
You know
was
the
not at work
whole
that
day.
day.
Oh, you
I
were?
had a sick child, but I received information saying, "Girl, we're not coming back to school."
See?
Wow.
Take your computer.
Well, you know what? I was subbing at the South High School that day, and they didn't even make the announcement till like 30 minutes before the buses were coming. So we really didn't even
You didn't
know.
even have time
Right,
to anything
right.
prepared.
Because I think the
Wow.
governor's address was late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It was like after
Right.
2:00.
Yep.
Wow.
So, you know,
Mhm.
school ends for us 2:30.
2:30, yep.
You know, so there was really not much time. Like I said, I wasn't even there.
Mhm.
And just didn't go back to work.
You know, it's
Wow.
interesting because with my job that my husband was traveling out of the country, coming back right when we got the word. And I was working from home that day because I'm able to do remote working. And then our company said, don't come back into the office. We'll figure out when we're coming back. So I'm like, all right, we left all our personal belongings.
Right,
Just
right.
It literally was like the world just stopped. Right.
Yeah.
It did.
So with that said, kind of help us understand how, you know, like the emotions around, I mean, because when you're talking an abrupt change like that, it's got to do something to children, to the teachers, the educators, the staff, everybody involved in the educational system. So how did you guys cope with that or manage? What was your first thought at that point in time?
Honestly, because at that time I was not a contracted teacher. My first thought was, how am I paying my bills next month?
Oh my God.
That was really
Right,
my first
right.
thought. But it ended up working out for me because I still live in the home that I raised my 6 children in. So I had space. So people were like, Mom, what are we going to do? Can you help? Can you keep our kids while we work from home? So I had a daughter and grandkids come and son-in-laws. But I think it was so traumatic that the teachers really couldn't guide the students. Like the teachers didn't know what to say, what to do, how it was going to look.
Right.
So that kind of put them at a loss for even how to guide the kids at that point.
We had 2 weeks to kind of get it together. Like, there was 2 weeks of really
Nothing.
Mhm.
So there was, you know, some correspondence as well. Like, you just have to get yourself together. You know,
Mhm.
I think we did a really good job with what we were given
Mhm.
and did the best that we could. And I think that students were receptive to that.
Mhm.
You know, I believe the teachers did their best. And I think that everyone just honestly just pulled together just to get it done, to
Right.
get to June, and then figure
Yeah.
out what it was going to look like, you know. And I think that's the best way to describe it. That I think we really did a great job
Mhm.
for the ones that were able to get on, for the ones that were able to, that people were present.
Mhm.
You can't account for those that didn't show up. You know, we did our best in terms of how to make accommodations to get students through.
Right.
And I think those went on individual basis as much as possible. Like, okay, the situation, we had kids that lost parents. Like,
Right.
there were
Yeah.
things that happened, you know, that extenuating circumstances that we all I think everyone just did the best they could.
Yeah, and I you know, I have to commend all educators, the staff. It was a huge undertaking, I think, for everyone, right, including the parents. But had it not been for everyone pulling together and trying to figure out how do we get, like, all that's happening, I have to figure out how to just get through it, right? Because you had 3 months left of school.
Yeah.
And we have to get these students through.
But you know, one thing that occurs to me when I look back on it, and I think across the country, we missed a really good opportunity
Mhm.
to give a message to our students, because everybody was all concerned about, well, how do we make this feel normal?
Right.
It wasn't normal.
Right.
And I think we would have served our students better if we said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's learn together. We have to pivot. We need to teach our kids how to pivot, and we don't, because life is going to be throwing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that if we had kind of taken that word normal out of what we were doing and just said, I don't know,
Yeah, right.
I don't know, you don't know, let's come together and figure this out. I think that would have been like more of a life lesson.
And it was new normal.
Then it was new
The new
normal.
normal, right.
It's not new.
Right.
New normal is
It's
new.
different. It's
It's right.
different.
It's just new. We don't know. And
Right.
we're trying to figure it out. Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely.
It was definitely different. I remember, you know, friends of mine, you know, running to the school, grabbing, you know,
It almost felt
computers,
apocalyptic, right?
yeah,
What do I need?
exactly, and that's exactly it. It was apocalyptic. Perfect, right there. But you know, I guess from a feeling standpoint, because you know, you're not only educators are in this system, but you have children.
Yes.
As parents, how did you manage this? And Tiffany, I know you have children as well that had to go through that.
Or
I can't speak for me. I have no children in school. I have 11 nieces and nephews. So I know what my sisters were texting, calling, Facebooking, everything. How did you manage that with your children?
Well, I'll step out of this part. My kids were grown. They were done by then. My baby was 19.
My kids did really well. They really, I'm there, I had to teach during the day. So I was required to teach, and we decided to work it out. You have class, get up, do what you need to do. You have class, get up, do what you need to do. And I would use my time in the afternoon to work with my little one as much as possible, So I would tell people this, because I had people who were struggling, colleagues of mine. I said, let me tell you what I did. I said, I would let my son stay up very, very late at night. So I knew he would sleep through the morning when I had to teach.
There you go.
And then I would get him up, later on when I had some more flexibility in time, because I followed the same schedule. And then we would do what we had to do. There was only one day a week that he had to be up by, by 10 to be in class, and I would work around that. But that's what I needed to do for me and for my family and for how we needed to function. So it's like, you have to do what you need to do for your own family. You can't look at what other people do and say, I need to do it this way. And that's why I told you, I said, you have to function what works for you. You can't look at other people and try to follow somebody else's lead for something that's not your story. Like, this is what works for me. I have to do this. Somebody else might have to do something else.
Right.
But we have to be more conscious of that, because we're always trying to figure it out through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah.
Use your own.
That's right.
And if you don't have good eyes, ask somebody to help you.
Right.
And that's the problem. We don't want to ask for help.
Right.
Ask for help,
Right.
and say, this is what I need. I utilize my kids a lot. Hey, I need you to keep an eye on him,
Yeah.
until I do this. My daughter helped me a lot, and I appreciate it. She became my personal assistant. I said, okay, listen, go take this and go do this. And she would do it for me, So you have to utilize what you have without burdening people. You have to share and say, listen, this is what I need. And that's how I was able to do it.
yeah, I think for me, the first week we stayed in routine, because you can't take them out of routine, right? Because they need some type of structure until we can figure out what was really going on. So the best thing was to keep them into the routine that they were already in, getting up, going to the table, knowing what they need to do, reading 45 minutes until the teachers figured out what they needed to do. They had already had their laptops, because again, they were bringing their Chromebooks home every day.
Yes.
So they were able to still check in. They were able to do so the things that they could do. I still continue that routine until we were fed more information from the teachers. I think it's being attentive to your child's needs, knowing what's going on in the school. So a lot of people, I believe, if you don't follow your kids or even email the teachers, you're lost when that happens, because it's like, okay, what's going on? But if you know everything that's going on, the teachers would laugh, and my kids used to get. They used to say, "Oh God, your mother, there she goes," right? Because I was always emailing the teacher, so I kind of knew what was going on. So my daughter would come home and she would joke, because she's like, "Ma, they be joking about you because you're on the emails."
Right.
So I kind of knew what was going on. But for the parents or a person who doesn't follow like that, they probably were really extremely lost, or the person that wasn't tech savvy or did not have the computer at home. So we stayed in a routine until the teacher said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." And then we got into what you said. Okay, how is it going to work for us? Because we no longer have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So that was a plus. That was a plus for me,
Yes.
because I was getting up at 4:30 before them, right? And then I got them up at 5 o'clock. So I was like, oh, we don't have to do this no more, right? So we started changing the routine, and we started, okay, I think I like this. And then I actually found out that it worked a little bit better for them, the cyber school. So we got into that routine, and it worked out a little bit more for them. And actually, it turned out to be pretty good. And then we did that, for a year and a half. And now we're back at them going back to school.
Yeah.
And that has been an adjustment too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I saw it through a different lens as the grandma, because like I said, a daughter and my son-in-law, they had their 2 kids and they moved in. Avia was only in preschool, but I mean, they did do an online. She had an online every day. They would take a break at 10:30 for 2 hours and give her something like we had to print out whatever her worksheet was. But I did that. And so I think about those parents, like my daughter and son-in-law, who were both working from home, right? And like, what would have happened then? And then that was a situation that a lot of parents found themselves in. Yeah, I'm home and I'm working, I'm physically here, but I can't deal with that because I got to do this, because this is where the money is.
Right.
you know.
I think a lot of parents struggle with that because I think about even my sisters, like they had, one is in, in a hospital, works in a hospital. So imagine COVID environment,
Right.
working in a hospital, having to be there, for many different hours overtime, and then having a child that they have to, help as well. I think the biggest thing that also I started hearing and started seeing is that, and we talked about this earlier, is that there were a lot of parents that, are just not savvy technically,
Yeah.
right? Technology today has picked up much quicker
Much
than
quicker.
it has in the past.
Correct.
Some kids are very savvy. We got all the
Right.
iPhones and
Right.
everything else and the iPads, but parents were struggling.
Right.
And
Yeah.
some kids were struggling, and some didn't have internet or
That's it.
computers or what have you. What was that like in that type of environment? Because again, world stopped. We need to educate still. We are providing tools. We have lesson plans. Teachers have lesson plans that they already probably had in
Right.
place. But now how do we get to those students? Because that was a big
Right.
struggle for a lot of people.
You call,
Yeah.
you contact.
Mhm.
Is everything okay? You still do what you would do in a classroom for a child that's detached.
Right.
Well,
You know,
can I ask a question, Trinae? Well, in East Stroudsburg, did they give out hotspots? Were they able to give out hotspots to families that didn't have internet? I know Blue Ridge also did
Yeah.
offered some
I want to
free.
say the Blue Ridge. I can't say for sure if
They
they
have
did
to
that,
close.
but I mean, we did once those needs were assessed.
Right.
We did whatever we could, and then there were students that were just paper and pencil.
I
Because
will
if you
say
don't
Blue Ridge
have-
did offer.
Right.
They did,
Yeah,
yes,
I
I did
saw
know that.
A notice go through, so I know they did offer.
Yeah.
I don't know how many.
And I think it was free for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
you got to reduce them out. But I know there were, kids that were paper and pencil. That if you don't have that accessibility to internet, or sometimes you just don't work well that way.
Right.
So those parents were able to go and get, paper pencil things, so they get packets every week.
Mhm.
For the week, the work that's there for the week, they would pick that up. So they did whatever they could to make sure you had what you needed, if that's what you wanted.
I have a question
Sure.
too. Because Tree of Life. So when the whole thing blew up, of course, Tree of Life blew up because now everybody's looking for help.
Right.
I reached out to some teacher friends of mine because what I wanted to do, this was before they had announced that they weren't going to do SAT. So I wanted to do an online SAT prep, and I was looking for a math teacher to do like a 5-week workshop. And everybody, all the teachers were like, I would love to help you. I can't. I'm overwhelmed because is it true? Like they were actually still teaching the 4 classes a day.
You taught your schedule.
See, that to me, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you taught your schedule. So your schedule that you had, like last year, I taught life skills.
Right.
So life skills is for students that are significantly, have significant intellectual disabilities. So my kids did amazing.
Right.
I was so proud of my students. They did amazing, but that's difficult.
Yeah.
But it worked, because like we talked about structure.
Mhm.
We took what we did and moved it into a new format.
Right.
So it was a new format, but now, we always have math at this time.
Right.
This is what, and my students were looking for that consistency.
Right.
They were looking for that, like Mrs. Larry's 901, I didn't get on yet. I'm like, listen, I'm trying to make breakfast, but I'm here, but yeah, but it was, for them, it needed to happen that way. And I think that for us, I think we needed that as well, just as much, just because it's like, it gave you, as much as we talked about
Right.
normal not being normal, people needed a little more.
Yeah.
They needed a little bit to know, okay, I got homeroom, I got this, I got that, and I know that this is what my day is gonna look like.
Right.
Fatigue, yeah. I had a lot of Zoom fatigue. It was a different type of tired,
Yeah.
because you are on the computer all day
All day.
long. And it was different, but it's like we did what we needed to do
Right.
to offer instruction the way that it needed to be offered for our students. So
Yeah, because like I said, I shared a little bit about how how it works for me at my school. So we teach once. It's recorded. Those that can work asynchronously can just watch the recording and go on. But the whole rest of my day is I go through my list and I plan for the next day. Okay, he's got 3 overdue lessons. Let me put him, and the student gets booked into my Zoom room. So I know at 10 o'clock it's just me and this kid. I can pull up, this is the essay you did last week. Let me show you where you went wrong. Or this, so it really lends to a little more of that independence, that personalization. And I just could not imagine. Even though like I am on the computer all day and I am on Zoom all day, but if I had to do like 30 kids back to back to back online, I don't know that I would have felt as fresh or, you know.
Well, you still
that's
got your
kinda-
prep, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So high school
Yeah.
works a little
yeah.
differently. You know, I had what we do block schedule.
Right,
So
right.
my prep, you know, essentially was from where last year, like 2 hours.
Right,
You know,
right.
so you still got that time away, you know, that you would have like your traditional lunch and your
Right.
traditional time away from kids. So it gave you that, you know, but it, you know, it was fine. It was just different.
You know,
It was
yeah.
just different, and it
Yeah.
was different for everybody. Everybody had a different level of different, and we were able to find our way as much as we could, even in the midst of COVID and the crazy. COVID was crazy. COVID still happened.
Yeah, it's still, it's,
So can you explain to me the difference between the charter school
yeah.
and the public school? Because is it more personalized, right? Do
But
you
not
get
every charter
personal-
school works that way.
Okay,
My
Mhm.
school just happens to work that way.
right, because for my kids, right, they have personalized teaching, but it was like, 4 or 5 kids to that one Zoom
On Zoom.
versus your personalized, which is just that one kid and you.
Yeah.
So there was a little difference there.
It can
But I
be
get-
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
but
You know,
Okay.
it can be that
Okay.
because number one, you have to identify your students that are in need.
Mhm.
So you can pull them and say, listen, this group here, I'm gonna have you work on this.
Mhm.
I'm gonna take this group and I'm gonna do this. So, hey, I'm gonna have you guys log back in at 12:30.
Mhm.
I'm gonna work with this one and this. So that was happening for
Mhm.
people, for students, as much as they, who needed what. And especially in that environment where students had so many different needs, teachers had to be more aware of seeing what does it look like when a student's not engaged.
Mhm.
You know, now the thing is that the kids don't like to keep their cameras on. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, no, that's the.
That was the
That
biggest
was-
factor.
Yeah, that, yes.
so depending, like I had a rule, you have to have it. You know, and
Yeah.
that honestly, I should say that was
the
a
district
rule
rule. Yeah.
for the district. But
Mhm.
then, as teachers, sometimes you make your own decisions
Right.
as far as what is okay. Then that changes well. You know, that, sometimes we might not know why cameras off. Maybe they need to be on.
Right.
Maybe they do. So we're not going to turn the student away because their camera's not on. And we're not going to not teach them because their camera's on. We just going to work it out.
Right.
And we're going to teach and we're going to do. So those things had to shift too, social and emotionally, knowing that
Mhm.
there's reasons why we don't know what students' house look like.
Yeah.
We don't
Yes.
know what
That's-
is going on. What is that? Who's doing something in the
Background.
background? We
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
So this is why
Yep.
we had to begin to shift from that place of this is what we're doing to
Have some
okay,
more
yeah, to make
yeah,
flexibility.
let's be flexible.
Right.
Let's be a little more empathetic. Let's
Right.
not be so rigid.
Right.
Let's understand that there's a lot of things happening that we don't know,
Right.
and we need to be okay with that,
Yeah.
and just do what we need to do as much as possible to make students as comfortable as possible,
Right.
so that we can get this job done.
Yeah,
So
that's a
yeah.
I can see that turning into a whole nother genre because your camera's off and ACS come to your house because your camera's off. Okay?
Okay.
Because
But you
we
can't
turn things into
Yeah, we
It's
can't,
a whole
do that.
nother problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't do that. Like you just got
and I would tell my kids it's disrespectful. Your teacher's talking to you. Why is your camera off? You know?
But
never-
but to your point, there could be situations
There
going
are.
on at
There's a
home.
lot.
And you know what people say, even with work, we have, Zoom, we do Teams, we do
Right.
all things, and we say when we're with a client, have your camera on so they can see you, background,
Right.
whatever. Okay, but 9 times out of 10, outside of that, I don't need people don't need to see and record or
Mhm.
whatever my environment.
right.
You know?
If there's a certain amount of people, once I see a certain amount of people in a meeting, my camera will go off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is. Like if I'm in a large, 40,
Right.
50 person meeting, you can't really see me anyway.
Right.
So I'm gonna
Right.
unless the person makes that
Right.
request,
Right.
because it's like I don't feel the need for that if there's 50, 60. I mean,
Right.
you be
Yeah.
you
Why?
need-
Why? Who's gonna actually see?
See,
you?
right. But I know, like, when I first started with CCA, Miss Footman, I'm like, come on, everybody put your cameras on, everybody, don't write in the chat pod, put your mic on. Well, what I realized was somebody would put their mic on because they want to answer a question, but they got a little sister over here screaming, mama's washing dishes
Right,
over there.
right.
Yeah,
And it's not as easy as, well, can you go into another room? Like, maybe they only have 2
That's
rooms
right.
Exactly.
house.
That's
There's
right.
nowhere else for
Then
them
I
to
love
go.
the chat box.
I hate, you know what, I'm too old.
Okay.
I can't read and talk and
I love it. And they so much of that.
But
Come
they
on, Rob,
do.
Get in the
No,
chat box.
But
get in
they,
the chat
no,
box.
the kids really, really do. But I do struggle with being able to read those little words. So my kids over there, but that's the joke of the class.
Yeah.
So this woman's old, so y'all gotta help me. So if you put something in the chat box, now I don't respond. You better, raise, do the raise your hand
So let
thing
me
or
tell you
something.
this, put somebody in charge of the chat box.
Yeah.
That's what I
This is our first week.
That's
Yeah, that's what I did.
somebody-
That's what I ended up doing last year.
So give somebody a job,
Yeah.
put them in charge of the chat box, and let them be the person to manage.
You know, it's interesting because when I and again, depending on what type of work you do, labor or whatever have you. I mean, if you have the ability to work from home, it's much easier to adapt. And in real life, you know, as adults,
Right.
these situations actually are life. You know, post school.
Yeah.
You know, even in colleges and I remember when I started college. I mean, there was no remote
Right,
learning,
right.
You had to be in the classroom. And then they evolved into remote learning, and it was like, oh my God, I was like, this is brand new. But you know, the anxiety of that.
Well,
which-
there are a lot of adults that struggle. I mean, teachers that I spoke with that struggle with working from home
Mhm.
because it does take a certain kind of discipline and it's in a certain setup. And there were some teachers that really it took them a minute to kind of even get themselves together to effectively do this.
That's the other piece is because it's not just the students,
Right.
the teachers. Some teachers probably are not as savvy, technology wise, you know, then, you know, students are probably more savvy than they are in most cases.
And we assume that everybody, even though we're adults, have good situations at home.
Right.
Right.
You know, that's
Exactly.
the assumption that because you're an adult and you're working and, you know, you have a home and children, that your life is good at home.
Right.
There's some people who love work and love going to work,
Mhm.
love
Yeah.
being in the classroom. And there were a lot of people that struggled with that. I
Yeah.
miss my students. I want to
Yeah.
come back to work. You know, that was another struggle for some people.
How is that? You know, when you talk about teachers, you know, you're spending the majority of the day with the student, right? You can see, you can understand what they're dealing with. Maybe their family environment, maybe they confide in the teachers, counselors, things of that nature. How did you guys manage those from a social, mental health perspective when, you know, being home?
Yeah, I had that for me. Like I said, last year was my first year with CCA. So not only was I, you know, just getting used to being online, but that's a very special population.
Right.
I have students that are married. I have students that have children.
Mhm.
I have students that they because they can watch the lesson later, they work full time and they support their families. So there are a lot of different you know, situations that you have to be sensitive to. I mean, my day is not a 9 to 3 day.
Mm.
I mean, there are some students I can only talk to them after 6 p.m.
After.
or on Saturday. You know, I had a girl, she had a baby and she was pregnant, and the only time that she would do save all her work, and then on Sunday we would just go through Zoom and go through class, because that's when her husband would take the baby and go visit his mom.
Wow.
You know, so
So how was it with the, you know, we're talking K through 12. How was it with, you know, high school students? Like the flexibility, you had to flex. If you have adult, you know,
yeah, pretty
students,
much, yeah.
you know, so then you have the children, right? So is there more flexibility with, you know, with teachers? Were they flexible with, you know, maybe I need to be available after, you know, because I know you had little sessions during the day, but then after hours. How was it?
I can only speak for myself, and I would make myself as available. And I shouldn't say that. I have colleagues that I know do that because they love what they do.
Mhm.
So we're not going to just like, oh, 2:30 quitting time.
Right.
You know, gotta go. You know, if you knew that there was a student that had a situation why they weren't on, you're going to make yourself available. And that's what education is about. It's not for you to just say, you know what? Yeah, this is the time I get off here. Good luck. You
Right, yeah.
know,
So
you know, God bless, you know, like, no,
Yeah.
you make yourself available, you know, there were students I had to talk to later or different things that I had to do, but I know the people that I know loved what they do so much that they wanted to make sure this one needs to graduate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we need to make sure that this is done this way, then this is what we're going to do. And that's what I love about the people that I know who love what they do.
Mhm.
They're making sure whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. If it's after hours, I'm going to do it.
Right.
If it's a Saturday, if I got to, you know, whatever. People are that consistent and connected to their students that they want to see them survive.
Survive and thrive.
So
yeah.
they're going to do that. And I know people did go above and beyond, especially knowing that people are struggling. Kids who lost parents. There's a lot of things that happened during COVID that didn't look like what we were familiar with.
Right.
So we had to make those changes and do what we needed to do. And these are the people who do it anyway.
Right.
So these are the people who are regularly like, yeah, come, I'll get there early, you know, or I'll stay later because I know that this is what you need. I'll make myself available. So I definitely think that definitely took place.
I have a daughter, and she teaches high school science in New Orleans,
Mm.
and but that the horror stories that we would call, you know, how you doing? And she was like, Mom, she says, I have parents that are yelling at me because I'm calling at 6 o'clock to talk to their kid because they didn't show up for the Zoom lesson today, and the parents like, why are you interrupting my kid? And she was like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Right.
You know, and she really struggled. She started with Teach for America, so they go into the more impoverished areas anyway. But it was funny because in the first year, all she kept saying was, I don't understand. Kids come to school and they don't want to learn. I said, Gianna, this is not you. You were like in the gifted classes. And, you know, you have to find your way to
There's-
reach your kids, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So, but yeah,
That's-
she really struggled with the
With
parents.
the parents, yeah. And you know, parents struggled with teachers, they struggled with the kids are struggling with teachers,
Themselves.
the parents themselves. So, you know, so this is COVID environment, right? Now we're coming out of this and, you know, there was decisions on whether kids were going back to school, whether there was remote cyber schooling, et cetera, and so on. John, I want to kind of pivot to you. So your thoughts on how things are progressing from a current state environment from a school perspective, because I know you've been involved in the district and things of that nature. So what are your thoughts and
Well,
perspective?
I think everyone can agree that we prefer to have the kids in the school.
Mhm.
I think for socialization, you're talking about all the issues with parents working, other family members in the home, all these distractions and all that sort of things. I think most people probably would prefer to have their children going to school like we're accustomed to doing. What we're finding though is a lot of people, I think we all know about the mask debates and the
Mhm.
vaccines and the whatever. People that don't seem to really want to do what it'll take to keep the kids in
in school? Yeah.
We've already seen football games have to be postponed or canceled or forfeited. It appears that it's only going to get worse. Once again, I know that, I'll speak for myself. Earlier this year, I thought we would return to this, what we consider to be a sort of more normal situation. But we see that for many people in our communities, not just here, I mean, throughout the entire country, perhaps even worse in some parts of the country, that don't want to do the kinds of things that they need to do to keep their kids in school, keep them safe, which I don't understand. Now, I don't have children. I do have 3 stepdaughters and 9 grandkids and 3 grandkids.
So you have
Congratulations.
kids. You too have children.
Right, right? They don't have to be you know, or
Listen,
Right.
feed them long enough, they'll look like you too.
Wasn't involved in their raising or anything like that. Ray and I got together, we were in our 40s, and they were already
Mhm.
very well along. But nonetheless, I'm somebody very interested in background. My mother was a teacher, my grandfather before her was a teacher, high school principal, and so it's something I've always had an interest in. I left my previous location, the age of 37. That was the first. And so now, yeah, I'm getting very involved. I go to 3 different school district school board meetings, committee meetings, and whatever we can see, and all the sort of best practices are, some ideas going on in different districts. But like I said, I think everybody would like to have kids in school.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
that's the
Socialization.
optimal
Mhm.
situation for most kids. I think we discovered, like you mentioned, you know, for some kids that's not correct, not the best approach. And what you're doing is a part of that, meeting the needs of those kinds of students that need that kind of environment. That's that equity. that I
Right.
think we're talking about. So, which is a whole other issue.
I think it's important though, right? I mean, if you're talking about students and the inequality or you know, I mean, it's a challenge.
Okay.
But you know, so what are you? I know you mentioned about school board meetings, so actually, I'd like if you can elaborate on what are some of the things that you feel are opportunities based on discussions that are had in these board meetings, and how important. Because I feel it's so important and vital for your children, for parents to also be involved and engaged, and how they go about doing that to make sure that they understand what's going on from a school perspective.
Absolutely. And I think that some of the efforts that are being done in the area, creating committees
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, what's happened in Stroudsburg, we're disbanding the administrative committee and now we're doing the board committee. And I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how diverse it's going to be. I'm waiting to see. I mean, they said they wanted transparency, we had accountability, whatever. Guess what? I'm going to be holding accountable.
issues
So many times.
it's so manipulated, because what it is that I want you to tell me what I want you to tell me right now. And something that I've learned is that just because I'm not telling you right now doesn't mean I'm not gonna tell you.
Right.
But that just means that you have to wait, because you don't have a right to demand.
But not even just a right, I think sometimes people, they want the information, but like, we're still working on it. You know, we're
Right,
still working on it.
But that was the case with the administrative committee in Stroudsburg. Dr. Curry put it together, had faculty, had community members, 3 board members who were members of that committee wanted to step up. And they're still working, they're working on it. I have the letter right here that the students wrote for the Pocono Record and presented to the school board. I read this and I cry.
It's sad.
If you can't feel the pain of those students, it's like, so they responded, they did something. It's a step. Is it enough? Well, we'll have to see how it's play out. We have to give them some time. And now basically they're just throw it away. We're gonna start all, we're gonna reinvent the wheel. And I fear what's gonna end up happening because I look at the Stroudsburg School Board. I speak only for myself.
Right.
The disclaimer.
Right.
We're disclaimer, so it's fine.
We all speak for ourselves.
And I look at that, I don't see diversity. How are they going to create something that will be diverse and will actually cause there to be some kind of tangible changes?
Correct.
You know, and I mean, I'm told, I have not been to high school, but we're having an open house, I will be going.
Mhm.
A couple of weeks. You know, they have signs on, hate has no home here. Well, that's lovely, you know?
Mhm.
But what does it mean
What does it
without some
mean?
kind of action? If the administration isn't, I've heard tell, and speaking out of turn, that there are faculty and staff in the Stroudsburg School District that this is homophobic or misogynistic or whatever.
So John, could you read a little bit of that?
I was
letter
just
for
gonna
us?
say,
I
we'd
mean,
like to
so that people
understand
could
a
understand
context.
the letter
Right.
that was put out. And now we have, I believe, last week they dropped the diversity. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, the school board decided we need a diversity committee that is answerable only to us.
Ridiculous.
And so, you know, you mentioned about transparency, that was the buzzword that they used, why it needs to be under the auspices of the school board and all in the public eye,
Mhm.
public scrutiny. And sometimes I like to say that sometimes leaders have to lead. They can't just simply respond to the demands of the most vocal people in
Absolutely.
the community.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to stand up and say,
The good old boys
This
club,
this
huh?
is what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Fine, next election, vote me out.
Yeah.
Guess what? For now,
Now,
This is
right,
what we're doing.
ridiculous.
this is what we're going to
Yes.
do.
And
Period.
that's why I was saying demand. You know, like you can demand all you want,
Mhm.
but you have to understand people have to make decisions even beyond that. That you can ask for something, you can demand something because you feel that that's your right to do that. But yet and still you have to allow people to do their job and do the work. And that is where I feel
And
like
let's see
it's
where they
not
come out.
right.
Mhm.
You
Where-
see where it goes.
Once they present something in public, once they come to some kind of, I don't say conclusions, but recommendations or advice or whatever it is that they come up, whatever the committee comes up with. Before anything can happen, the board has to be has to take action. The board is who rules, right? They're in charge.
Mm.
And nothing will change, nothing will happen without it being brought to them for their
Stamp of approval.
for their stamp of approval. for
So,
their
so let me ask,
consideration.
how is this board made up? What is this board made up of? Is it, how is it made up? You tell me.
You mean like
The-
political affiliation?
Yeah, I mean, is it evenly black and the diverse?
Oh,
no,
diversity,
no,
no.
no, decisions.
Oh, no.
Who's making these
And the
decisions?
Stroudsburg School Board currently, the president is African American.
Mhm.
There is a gentleman who is an immigrant from Turkey. He teaches at ESU.
Mhm.
There is one lady who is Latina,
Mhm.
and then there are 6.
Mhm.
And that's not the district. That's not what the student.
Doesn't
body
sound
looks like.
diverse to me at all. But
Yeah.
these are the people
But
that are
it
making
depends
board
on who
decisions.
runs for the
Right.
seats.
See, that's the other thing.
Mhm.
That's the other thing.
Yeah,
It-
and
Plug in that here.
Sure.
Money for each child.
Okay.
Stephen Lurie's running.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had to plug that in.
But that goes back to, we need more support. We need more of us to get into it, right? And
And be
understand
involved.
what is going
You know,
on.
you
We
said
also
you was
talked about that, right? We also,
you
go
you
ahead.
dropped out of going to PTA things or whatever. One of the things that we've been doing, some of us, a few of us now, I'm a graduate from Pleasant Valley, so I'm able to go there and I can speak.
Mhm.
They have the rule that alumni may may address the board. Other school districts, I don't know that that's the case. Strasburg, I can address because I live there. And my family's lived in Surround Township now for almost 40 years.
Mhm.
I lived there for the last 2 years. I still actually have property in Baker School District. My grandson goes, I can go there too, but that's another mess. It's like, enough, enough. I have enough. Dr. DeMary then invited me to, I met her just a week ago yesterday. Stroud Fest, we came by the booth because I had commented about what she had said about that in Stroudsburg. She encouraged me to come to the meeting this past week and come to their school meetings, which I will go as an observer to see, because it seems to me that East Stroudsburg has a little bit more together. I think it's from strong leadership and the willing participation of other people. And it appears to me that East Stroudsburg's got more support and more. It doesn't fully reflect.
Well, but
No,
I,
she's not.
no, well,
But at least has an openness.
but I think there have been minorities on the East Stroudsburg board. It's not that it's ever been even, but going back from when Audrey Hocker was on. So like they have more of a history of, a minority input, if you will. So,
Which is important. People, and I know some people on the other side, they talk about identity politics, so they do it just as much. You gotta be like Christian, basically. Anyway, straight.
Straight.
Christian.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And
You know what, John, before you finish, because what I want to do is also, we have a call-in. So I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to call in, and I'm sure they have input or things that they want to speak to. So comments, questions, we'll give you guys the floor. 1-888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401 if you want to call into the show and provide us your comments, your questions that we can, help here with the panel that we have now. John, go ahead, because we're done. Because this is exactly where I wanted to go, because I wanted to make sure that we understand, like, we get the whole COVID environment, we get that there was opportunity, we get that we are now coming out of it. But there are decisions made, there's opportunities that impact our children,
I
right?
don't think it's coincidental that we see that in the midst of COVID, now we have another reawakening of problems with race, with misogyny, homophobia, these fears and everything. I don't think it's a coincidence of things happening at the same time. I want to speak about the former president. That didn't really crop out of nowhere.
Right.
It's something that's been
In
just
certain, yep.
we swept it under the rug for about 50 years, thought it kind of went away, and we elected a black president. And we see that when I addressed the Stroudsburg School Board meeting before they did what they did, I said, well, I grew up here. I went to Stroudsburg schools, kindergarten through 9th grade, so I went here at Stroudsburg. My family moved to Lost Township, so I ended up graduating from Pleasant Valley. When I went to elementary school, in Hamilton Elementary, it was a bunch of lily white kids. There was one Jewish family, and my best friend through grade school was Jewish, but he was the only one. Everybody else looked the same, sounded the same, believed the same. And parenthetically, at the Pleasant Valley School Board meeting, ladies stood up there. So people in Stroudsburg, they could clap for this. At least I've been told you should. One lady said they moved to the West End to avoid all of this stuff going on where they had to accept people that were different. Now she didn't say directly like that. What she said was, we moved out here to be around people who think like us and believe like us.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Look like us.
Wow.
She didn't say that, but okay. And that's the reality. Pleasant Valley is a total disaster.
Is it the same meaning that they voted against the equity policy?
Yes, they first got them to table up. What they got, they ended up having a tie on the board because one person was not present. And originally was going to be shuffled back to the policy committee for reconsideration. Now this is something that the Pennsylvania School Board Association had recommended. And that's what they do. I mean, I've looked into the PSBA. It's a non-for-profit thing. It advises on areas of policy, curriculum, and a whole bunch of different things for school boards. So that it's a resource for school boards. Not every school board has to recreate the wheel. This is a reference. And nearly all the school boards, there's 505 school districts, nearly all of them belong to this. It's not a governmental thing. It's a totally independent, not for profit, whatever, 501c3, whatever. But they use that as for guidance. Whatever. This was something that was proposed policy 832 plus PV, and somehow or other they managed to get it completely washed. They don't even want to consider the possibility, at least at Strasbourg, as a board committee. So maybe we have some hope. The PV, forget it. It's dead for now. And it's not going to come back anytime soon because likely the board is going to be coming further. There are only 2 reasonable people running for 4 seats. And we don't know how well they're going to do. So it's only going to get worse. And they have hereditary board seats out there. So it's Berger, Kresge,
Certain names that just have
Just
to
a
look
carry.
for the last
Right.
187 years.
Right.
Since 1960, since the district was formed.
That's
The
the
same
problem out here.
families.
That's
Well, they
smart.
did hire their first African American female principal. So
Oh,
we
did they?
will shout out to them.
Oh,
Maybe we thought that was enough.
they won't-
Well, can anybody speak to what's going on in Pocono Mountain? Like we talked about Stroudsburg, East Stroudsburg, and
Got a
Pleasant
call.
Valley.
I haven't gone to Pokemon.
I got a call.
So,
Hello, welcome to the Sistership Network. Your name? Hello, you're on with us. This is the Sistership.
Yeah, hold up.
Oh, they go. Okay. They'll call back. That's fine. 888-304-4401. Come on and call back in.
I'm just gonna read a few words. from
Yes,
this.
go ahead and read
Yeah,
them.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. So this is public
I had to
records.
print
This
this
is from the Pocono
It
records
was a
and
letter to the editor, to the Pocono Record, February 19th, 2021. And the administrative DEI committee in Strasbourg was set up. Well, what ended up happening is students then went to the school board in March. They took turns. They each had 3 minutes. So they lined up, as I understand it, and each read a portion until they read the entire thing on the record in the Strasbourg School Board. And so this was the initial response. I mean, the administration's response was to set up this administrative. But I read this, and because of having that black partner and going, what I learned a long time ago is don't talk. I used to say, go talk to some black people, go talk to some Latino people, not go listen to them.
Listen.
Go listen. And as a white man, I know there's nothing that I can say to anybody. I have nothing to add. I need to go open my ears and listen.
Listen to
Learn.
Right. Right.
White men always think they know everything. They do. I hate the stereotype. They really do. They
I
think
like
they have all the answers.
I like that.
What
The opinions of,
Right, shout out to this one.
shout out to disclaimer. Jack, go ahead.
Well, here, kill me before the goal. Okay. The Strasbourg School District, in particular Strasbourg High School, has been and continues to be an actively racist space. School should be a space in which every individual feels safe, respected, and valued. This does not happen at Strasbourg. And students whose intelligence was questioned by teachers, counselors, and administration, despite excellent academic performance, because of both explicit and implicit biases in the faculty. Students who were harassed by faculty and staff with racist comments and slurs. An administration that has failed to support and encourage students of color. We go on. Staying silent and maintaining the status quo in this time is a sign of approval of these terrible actions. Many of us regret remaining silent while attending Strasbourg. Well, praise God they stood up.
No, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and if you can't, and there's a lot, but if you can't read that and feel like, oh my God.
There's a
You know,
problem.
because when I
Right.
went there were no people of color to speak up. I mean, there were a couple in Strasbourg. When I went to PV, there was one black gentleman. He was great. He was at least 1 or 2 years older than I was. That was it, you know. So I come back. I was gone for some period other than Houston, Detroit, and Europe, Australia, whatever, did all these things. And come back. I'm thinking, well, look, there's a lot more diversity in the population,
Right.
whatever. And then you come. This
That
is
right
like
there is
smack
telling
me
you
upside
something.
the head.
Yeah.
You would think, but
And so you're reading that, right? We just had an incident. last week in the schools where they sent an email out because someone wrote something that was inappropriate in the school.
And what's done about it?
Right, and they said they were looking
Into it.
and looking into it, and that was it. So you really don't know what was done about it, what happened, what was said, or whatever, but it was inappropriate. So we do know that it still exists,
Inappropriate.
whether or not it was right, whether or not it was 2019 or whatever. We know that it exists because the kids do bring it home, and then they do send us emails when it happens. Oh, some kids came in and they did this, and my kids come home and they say this stuff to me. So I know
But
that it
what's
still
concerning
happens.
to me is the lack of, I mean, and the policy 832 at PV was not, of course they talked about COT.
Mhm.
Had nothing whatsoever to do with that. And it didn't even have to do really with instruction or curriculum
Right.
to students. It had to do with staff awareness
Right.
and staff training and,
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, we know the climate that we're living in. I mean, this is still going on. We know this for a fact. People can brush it under the rug, deny it, whatever they want to do, conspiracies, whatever have you, politics, whatever you want to throw in the mix, right? This is still going on. 2021. Okay? So, and you're seeing, and that, what students came and communicated, if I was an administrator or on the board or anything, it would literally tell me we have a huge, if these students are feeling this way
Mhm.
and seeing what's going on, and this is the climate.
but look what happened in Delaware Valley. They had an incident with a school board member making transphobic or agreeing with transphobic posts, whatever they tried. People, there was a big uproar up there, school board meetings, whatever, and the superintendent writes a letter and assures people, writes a very nice letter. But the thing that stuck out to me was, well, most of the students in the Delaware Valley School District feel safe. Well, you implicitly admitted. that some
Admitted that
don't.
there's, right,
Some
exactly,
don't.
exactly.
What are you doing
What are you doing
to address
about
that?
Right.
What are
Right.
you doing? I don't care if it's one student.
Right.
Right,
You know?
right.
Well, most of them do. The vast majority.
During
do.
COVID, that video came out with the young lady who made that explicit video, and that showed racism. I'm not sure what happened there or if it was swept under the rug. And that was a huge issue, and there was a march from I think, Dansbury to the school.
Well, yeah, that was.
What happened? I
One
mean,
was a white
we know.
student's asking, why can't
Right.
white students use the N-word?
Right,
But they said, whatever, they didn't understand.
but yeah, we have a school board that,
So we know that history, we know that the history books, I say this all the time, history is only one-sided from a history
And
book
sometimes
perspective
it's
and education
It's
perspective.
whitewashed.
It's-
Let's just call it,
Right.
which carries the double meaning that I intend.
That you intend to, and it's absolutely, and I think this is the reason why diversity is so
Important.
needed and important in our school systems. Because forget about the adults.
right,
They're gonna believe what they want, they wanna
Right.
feel what they want, and
Mhm.
unfortunately,
That's what I say.
that is an
People that look like me
imposed,
and
right.
My generation, I'm sort of tail end baby boomer
Right.
generation. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not, forget it. But I was at the West End Fair for 4 nights in the booth out there. And, forgive me, the dusty old white guys that go by, they say stupid stuff. But what really hit me was there was like an 18, 19, 20-year-old.
Right.
They'll
Look,
look
I'll give-
at me.
Look, there's
It's pretty hard.
14-year-olds looking 20.
Yeah, I see 10-year-olds driving cars.
Right.
But anyway, young man, obviously they're very young, 20.
I think they're having a little trouble hearing you on the mic. You might
Oh,
want to
I'm
speak into the
sorry.
mic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who came up and took one of the political buttons and threw it on the ground and was like, angry and
Enraged.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
like clinically about it. I don't play one on TV, but I mean, obviously, the young man needs some serious,
Yeah. Mental health. Mhm.
But all the other little buddies in this group, whatever, that's well, that's like elder townships.
But I think
How do we
too,
fix this,
well,
though?
one of the things when I taught out, because I started my education career in elementary school,
Mhm.
and one thing that stuck out to me because, right, we all know February comes, it's Black History Month, and we
Yeah.
all talk about Martin Luther King
Yeah.
and
Right.
Harriet. Well, I started to introduce the Fannie Lou Hamers, and when I taught a literature class for 10th grade. When we got to poetry, I introduced them to the last poets and Gil Scott Heron, and just started infusing some other, examples of Black history.
Right.
And I think that's part of it because I mean everyone knows Martin Luther King, so it's easy for a
Right.
teacher to say it's Black History Month. So we're gonna do I Have a Dream speech? Okay, well guess what? He had many other speeches. Let's talk about a letter from a Birmingham jail. Let's
Oh, yeah.
so there's so many things that can be incorporated
Not
just to
February.
and not just in
Right.
February, right?
Not
Exactly.
just in like.
It's all history.
But also, I mean, like I think I think it gets so much attention because then the racists can say, well, why do we have to talk about only Black? So we have to celebrate everybody's heritage, Asian heritage. We have to have Irish heritage. And I think if we begin to really do that, it doesn't have to be a scary thing for those people who just look at it as something different.
We relegate it to 1 month out of the year instead of making it truly our whole history.
It's just history.
It's history.
Right.
It's infused, it should be infused and incorporated in everything that we do.
Absolutely.
And it cannot just be one time.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where I feel like, that's,
Okay.
that gets box checking, like
Yeah.
right now, that's where you end up, that's what ends up happening. Because just like this, we have the letter and we have, okay, we formed the committee. Box check. No. There's a revamping.
That's not right.
There's a revamping that's necessary.
Yeah.
There's implicit bias training. You have to understand how implicit bias affects everything that you do. But when people don't realize that because they haven't done their own work, because they don't realize they have work to do, because I've just been okay.
That's it.
Right.
I've been okay. I've been okay
Right.
going here and going there. And my son has Black friends. What's the problem? Like,
Right.
it's okay.
Right.
Like, I
Right.
have Black friends. Like, it's okay.
Right.
Like, no, there's more to it than that. Like, something Don Lemon said, I was watching, and he said, if you don't have any friends that are different from you, you are failing.
Yeah.
Right.
You are failing. And it's true. You are failing. Like, you have to have people around you that don't just reflect your own views,
Your own
that
views.
don't just sit there and regurgitate what you say and agree with everything you say. You need you need to have people in your life that check you and say, hey, that's not right.
Right.
That's not okay. That thought process is not all right. We need to fix that. But we don't want that. Nobody wants to be accountable. Nobody wants to work.
Agree.
I think that's where we have to begin because
Agree.
that's where we need to go.
And the thing that I realize is this is something that white people have to do. We created it to not be specific.
Right.
other than-
And it's funny because Jane says that spicy. She says that too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
because this is the system we have set up.
Right.
This is the educational system, the political system. I had an argument with somebody who was trying to tell me the founding fathers were these godly men.
But we uphold the
Really?
system. White supremacy culture is upheld by all of us, and we don't realize it because it's ingrained in everything that we do.
Right.
So as much as it's something that you say that white people have started, we all are
We
part
all
of it,
have
and
our
we
part
all
in it.
have our
of it,
part
and we-
in making it
Right.
happen.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why Tiffany Howard and I were talking about this the other day about the lack of cooperation in the Black community.
Yeah.
Because there's an internalized racism.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I have unaware racism. I'll do and say things that I love it when somebody will check me.
Right.
Privately, don't call me.
Right.
People will say to me, John, I didn't believe you didn't need to sound like
Right.
that.
But that's how it came. Yeah,
Please,
right.
because otherwise I don't know myself from unaware racism, but I'm willing to learn.
Right.
The black people, I
That's
went
the start.
to the Center for Healing Racism 25 years ago. And that was one of the aspects of internalized racism, where black people distrust other black people because you too have been taught, we've all been taught to fear one another.
Right.
And it affects you and it affects me in different ways, but because I have the power.
And
And now
As a
I-
white man, I have the power.
And it also comes, like, I know for me, growing up, hi mom, but it was a little weird because my mom coming from the South, and it was about, you have to be a lady, you have to be polite, you have to speak, and you need your white gloves. My dad was from Harlem, born and raised in New York City. He was like, come on, here's a rally down the street, let's go,
The culture is different, right? So north, south.
So when I said to mom, I want an afro, she's like, no.
Well, going back to education and students, and it's sad to even here, but the reality is what it is. And I'm glad that they spoke up. But then the question is, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Because I think we're always focused on, and not intentional, we're always focused on the problem, but what are the solutions that can be put in place to help? And I think one of the big solutions is parents have to speak up, and they have to feel like they have a voice. The community needs to speak
Because
up.
I'm not a parent, but I'm speaking
Right,
about-
right.
It's a
You're right. Right.
So when me and John, we went to lunch the other day and we talked about it, right? And I said, don't tell me to go outside and change when we can't change internally
Right.
within
Yeah.
in our own community, right?
Mhm.
Because what I see up here in the Poconos, just in the Pocono areas, and that's just, it's all over.
Yeah.
But I'm here,
Right,
so I'm
you're here.
addressing what
Right
I
here.
see
Right.
here in the Poconos, right? So it's very small community, but within us internally, we fight, right? Because blacks don't trust blacks, and that happens all over. And then we don't trust each other, and this clique goes here, and this clique goes here. Oh, I'm not going to her thing. Oh, I don't like her,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't support what she's doing, so I'm going here. So what happens is, and we talked about it, right? When we have something that we have to get down and dirty on, see, we don't do what Martin Luther King did.
Right.
We don't do what Malcolm X did, right? We don't come together because we don't like her, okay?
Mm.
So we separate out, and we don't come, and nobody leaves because everybody want to be the HNIC.
Right.
Nobody wants to follow. We have forgotten how to follow each other, right? So we are trying to fight a battle that we're going to always lose because we as
Have to
black
come
people
together.
don't know how to come together
But I
anymore.
think, well, let me speak to that a little bit.
Mhm.
And I want to say that only because there's something I'm trying to do
Mhm.
with elevating the voices of the people.
Mhm.
As you know, I love the Lord, and I will
Mhm.
say that openly. Shout out to my church, Proclaim for Christ Ministry.
Mm-hmm.
However, I want to unify through the faith.
Stronger together.
Yes, through
Mhm.
our faith organizations in ways of organizing to understand what's going on.
Mhm.
Be aware of what's going on. You're
Absolutely.
sleeping,
Mhm.
and there are things happening underneath your nose
Mhm.
that you're not aware of. And I realized that
Mhm.
through our organizations that we can come together and do something great.
Mhm.
If we say we love God,
Mhm.
if we say we love our children, then at the end of the day, we all should be doing something to
Mhm.
do
To
to
do.
move whatever we're talking about to the next place.
Mhm.
Right.
So for me, I think the understanding is that yes, I do agree with that to a certain extent, but I also believe that there are people who are like, you know what, time out for all that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
and I'm one of them. I'm one of those people because
And you-
I don't do problems.
Right.
I don't
Right.
do
And you
confusion.
have to follow the people that are not
Yeah.
confused
Right.
and who,
Right.
who will follow that, because there are those who won't,
Yeah.
right? So
But meanwhile, work together with the people that you can work
Right.
together
Correct.
on the
Mhm.
issues that you can work together.
You find your people who are working.
That's
Correct.
change management right
I
there.
agree with Mary Jo about
Mhm.
this, but I don't like about this,
Right.
because Romeo, or whatever. Yeah. But meanwhile, if there are things that we can work together on,
Mhm.
then we need to do that and lay aside some of that.
Correct.
other
And
stuff.
that, I think it goes back
Mhm.
to what you were saying, Tiffany, and back to what you were saying is that, I know change management 101. You're gonna have people in the green, you're gonna have people in the red, right? And somewhere in between. You have to focus on the people that are already there or almost there.
Yeah.
Those are going to be your leaders to
Mhm.
help bring everybody else over. Not everybody, but a good
Who wants to
majority
come.
over. Who
Right.
wants to come? And that's what it's gonna take. It's taking and focusing not on the people who are just not ready, because you're
Right.
never
And they're
gonna
not
change
ready.
them.
You're not gonna change
You're
them.
forced. That's a forced
Mhm.
change that you're never going to win that battle.
Mhm.
You have to focus on the people who are willing to
Okay.
change
Right.
or are ready there.
Right.
They're green. They're ready to go.
Right.
Those are the people that we have to focus our energy
Mhm.
on, because we can't be focusing on the drama,
Right.
right? We got to focus on the product of the environment that is willing to move forward
Yes.
and evolve, because we're not there yet, because we're focused so much on the
Right.
people who are not willing
Mhm.
to see change.
Something I've learned from someone that I know, a professor of mine. You help people out, or you help people out. Meaning you move them out,
Right.
because when you have
Mhm.
work happening, you have work happening, and you have things happening. There's going to be people who don't want to do it,
Right.
but you want to help them out to go be somewhere where they are happy, because in this organization, this is what's going on, and that's why you get a top-down approach.
Right.
From when your top is agreeing to something and saying this is what we want, then everybody has to follow. If you don't like it, then you have to go find someplace else to go where you are going to be happy. So I think that's what people have to realize, that you have to have leadership that is willing to speak to what we're doing. It
Right.
cannot be wishy-washy. It can't be today we
Today
doing it,
this,
tomorrow we
Tomorrow
not.
we're not.
No, it can't be that way. So when you have good leadership that's like, listen, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to, this is what's happening here. There are districts right now who are 100% invested in this is the work that we're doing in diversity. We are doing this. This is a part of evaluation processes. There's districts that are doing that because they
Excellent.
believe in that work in the sense of this is not, we don't deal with that. Hate doesn't live here, but we're going to show you hate doesn't live here because on your
This is what we're
evaluation,
gonna do.
it's going to
So
say,
it's
what
like-
have you done towards looking into diverse issues? What have you done to improve yourself?
Right.
You know, so
Right.
there are people who are
Right.
doing that. It's just that, like, for example, Philadelphia, to graduate, they have a requirement that you have to take a class related into like diversity. You have to do it.
Mhm.
You know, everybody's not there. You know,
Right.
but look at the population of Philly. But
Right.
people think
Right.
that, you know, Philly's just concentrated. There, you know, it's where there's a lot of people of color, but it's really not that
Right.
way. It's just concentrated in a certain way. So there are people doing it.
Mhm.
But
It's
I think
happening.
also we have to understand everybody can't do the same thing.
No.
And that's where we
In
have
the
a
same
problem.
way.
And that's
Right,
where
like,
we have the problem.
Right. Because but I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You need to be doing
And
this.
then
I don't
we
know.
have to know.
I'm
Yep.
gonna go around on this
There
one.
it is.
Like for me,
Yep.
Test
I
your
know
climate.
I'm always so busy, so I don't do a lot of socialization. But one of the things that I try to be really responsible with, because and that's why I love teaching high school, I can speak to them in a different way. So, even with, like right now I'm teaching one of the most boring courses in high school, which is British literature. But I'm not very excited till we get to Frankenstein. But I always try to we're going into Beowulf, and we're talking about what makes a hero, right? So now we're changing the dynamic and definition of what a hero is. But I always try to let the kids know, I speak from your heart. I want them to have open hearts and open minds. I share as much of my story and my road with them, as I can, so that they understand. Just because I'm a Black woman and I was raised in New York, listen, I got 3 college degrees and I've done this, and it didn't come easy, and I did raise my kids, and my husband was in the home, and just to give them a different perspective of what life can be, because that changes their perception
Right.
as they go out into
Right.
the world.
Right.
It's true.
Your truth, your history,
Right.
your, and students need to trust
Yes.
as well, right? I
Right.
mean, the more you give of yourself, and
Right.
the more you show, that vulnerability and
Yes.
show, they're immediately kind of drawn
Yeah.
to that.
You have to
I
show
mean,
you're
sometimes
human.
it goes too
Right.
far.
You're
Like,
human.
Exactly.
You're
They
human.
want to share more than I really want to know. But I'm there for them.
That seems to me to be at the crux of the problem in some of the schools is that students don't feel like there's someone that they can go to.
Yes.
and
That's the
trust
sad, that's the
and
sad.
have their concerns or whatever's addressed.
Right.
And because that's what I see in this.
Yes.
letter.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
No connection.
Right. That there really isn't anybody.
Who's
that they
looking out
know.
for them, right?
Yeah.
Who
right.
has their interests at heart and will sit down and listen to them and then do something about it.
One thing I learned, I taught in the Allentown School District for 4 years, and serious school, school of trauma children, and one thing I learned there was that aspect of trust. I don't have to necessarily come from where you come from.
Right.
I don't live that life, but I understand that you're hurting right now.
Right.
Exactly.
And I'm going to do what I can to help you. I mean, I had a 5-year-old who was so traumatized and violent. Somebody took a red crayon. He stood in the desk and peed on the kid.
Oh my God.
I had another kid. I couldn't give him a sharpened pencil because he wanted to stab people in the neck.
Wow.
But this is what these kids are seeing,
Right.
and this is the environment. So now, how do you? So you have to be creative in the classroom.
Right.
Right. Kids have all sorts of trauma. So I had a little boy. He had this during math because he was embarrassed that he didn't get math. So to keep him from running out of the room, I had to clear under my desk and just let him sit under my desk while I taught math, and that was the only way he would stay
He
in the
would
room.
stay in the room.
So I mean,
it goes back to this trust thing, and I think again to your point with that letter, if students don't feel that they have a voice, they could speak, but if they're not heard, and people are not doing anything about it, they lose trust, all trust in the system, all trust in
And
their
what happens-
educators, all
and what
trust in them.
happens to their interest in education?
Exactly.
Exactly.
They
Now,
lose the motivation.
exactly.
These are kids that some of like dropping out, or
Yeah.
they're
Right.
going on to college, and
Right.
they don't reach their fulfillment, they don't
Right.
reach their
The potentials.
their potential. Like,
So do you
You know,
feel that if
and
there was more diversity in the school or diversity training, that they would trust more? And I know you're head of diversity. What are some of the things that you're doing or that can be done to help these kids that feel that way?
Well, there has to be an acknowledgement that there's a problem. You know, it starts there, and there has to be, it has to. We have to acknowledge that. Do we need this?
Right.
Why do we need this? It is very important for students to see people that look like them.
Mhm.
Representation matters. I
Mhm.
say it all the time, and it does matter. And it helped me in my own life because even though I didn't necessarily end up on the path that I thought I would at the time I would, but seeing that my parents were college educated, okay, my pediatrician was a Black woman, my kindergarten teacher was a Black woman. All of those things were things that I saw. My father's best friend was the obstetrician that delivered me, and he was the first Black man in Englewood, New Jersey, to have a practice. Like, these are the things that were taught to me. Now, even with that, I didn't necessarily end up on the right path. I ended up teaching in my early 30s. You know, I did other things before I got there, but that still was a foundation for me because if I didn't see it, then I wouldn't believe that it could happen. And that's what kids don't realize. Like, kids don't, like, we talk about teaching. We're trying to bring more educators into teaching. And right now, nobody wants to teach. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Teaching is just not a profession nobody wants to do right now. But even still, kids need to be able to see, I can do this because I see somebody who's either reinforcing that I can be something, or I see somebody that looks like me doing it. And as far like the diversity training that I've done for staff really helps them acknowledge a lot of their, number one, implicit bias, acknowledging that color blindness is not okay. It's not okay. We
Right.
cannot keep saying that we don't see color. Then that means you do not see me. I
See
am
me.
not
That's
invisible. I am
a lot of
not
white
see
people
through.
understand
They
that.
don't,
They
and
think
it's-
they've arrived when they say I don't see color.
Right. And I explained to people that yes, I know in the 80s the multiculturalism and all that was we don't see color, we love everybody. But guess what? My Blackness is who I am.
Right.
And me teaching my daughter about the beauty of who she is, and you're saying you don't see that, you are now moving, what I've said away from her. And now we're dismantling what I've taught her about beauty. And I try to explain that to her that you don't understand. Saying that is wrong because it's a part of me. People of color are used to be classified by color. Black people are used to being called Black.
Right.
That's just what it is.
Right.
Other people are not.
Right.
So when people go through that, they're like, I don't understand that. We're used to that. So it's not a bad word for you to call me Black. I realize I'm Black.
Right.
I walk around with my Blackness all day long, knowing who I am
Right.
and cannot separate from it.
Right.
And so by you saying you don't see it, is there a problem with it? That's what you have to begin to dig deep and see. And that's what, it's hard for people who teach. And I say that only because well-intentioned professions are doctors, teachers, any medical people go into that profession because they love what they do.
Right.
They love helping. They are helpers. That like Mr. Rogers said, you look for the helpers, right?
Right.
Those are the people who are doing this work as far as being educators. It's hard for them to see that there's something that might be inside of them that is not conducive for someone else's growth or someone else's growing, and it's something that we have a hard time dealing with. So I try to deal with people from a place of easing them in. I don't come out the gate saying you're all a racist, you can't keep doing what you like. No. We don't go into it from that place. We go into that place for let's talk about how students see certain things. So I show a video, about students' perspective and things like that. And then we talk about, microaggressions.
Right.
Let's talk about them. The fact that you saying that you are so well spoken
Right.
is not okay.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
No.
Oh, you're from. Where are you from? Is not
We're American.
appropriate. These are things that are not
Thank you.
okay, people.
Right.
We have to come. We got to do better, but we
Right.
don't know better. When we don't know better, we can't do better.
can't do
But once we know, we can. So I go through a series of different things with teachers to help them see certain things. Take the implicit bias test. Do it for yourself. You don't have to do it. Don't do it for me. Do it for you. So you can see what you really think about certain things.
Right.
And I have people that come back to me and say, Trinae, ever since I did this training, I see things so differently now. I'm so aware now. I tell people I'm the awareness police. I just want you to be aware. I just want you to now have an understanding of some things that you didn't realize you were doing unintentionally. I tell people every day, whenever I do it, you are not a bad person. You are not. You are someone who doesn't have information. Now that you have information, what are you going to
What are
do
you
with
gonna
it?
do with it?
Read a book, listen to a podcast. Don't just do it to do it. Do it with the intent to be better.
Correct.
Do it with the intent to change someone's life. Do it with the intent to realize that, you know what? I wasn't doing this right before. Now I'm doing something to improve myself so I can be the best educator I can be. I can be the best principal. I can be the best parent. I can be the best bus driver. Whatever you're doing, do it right.
Right.
You know, and be right about what you're doing. Be intentional about what you're doing to make someone's life better.
Can I get an amen on that? I'm just
Amen,
saying.
amen.
Come on, it's Sunday.
He's on it.
I'm going back to church here in a while. Come
She's
on.
preaching today.
But that first step of realizing, oh, I do need help.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And your approach sounds wonderful. I did today. I mean, where because if you're perfectly right, if you beat slap something upside the head with a 2x4.
They're immediately gonna pull back.
Just
That's it.
like
You
with
lost them.
students,
You can't.
just like with students, adults will not learn from someone they
They
don't
will
like.
turn.
Right.
Yes,
So, you know,
it's true.
But you know, one thing that I feel that I did fairly well with my children, like you said, we taught them to be very comfortable. And remember, when I came up here, we were known as the black family with the dreads, because we all had dreads, and it was right, and, right, right.
Okay.
So, you know, so you see 5 people walking on the street with dreadlocks, you kind of, oh, I know them. But it also, but we've also taught our children to be appropriately curious about other people,
Right.
right? So, you know, it's not only about you have to understand me, I have to understand you too. And I think that that's an important part that we sometimes miss because, you know, yes, we are the race, if you will, that has been so downtrodden, but we forget that we have learning that we need to do too about accepting
Yes,
Right.
the other side.
Yes, we do.
You know,
We
so,
can't just
so we
play
have to
victim.
be a little more comprehensive,
I agree.
Right.
I think.
You know, great discussion. Honestly, I mean, this right here is, I think, it's an eye opener for a lot of people that, you know, either just ignore, step back, don't want to deal with it. But there's so much opportunity, and we already know just based on what was stated by some of the students coming to this board meeting, and there needs to be more diversity,
And they're going to be back again.
and they're going to be back
They're
again.
going to be back again. One of the young ladies, she's a junior in Stratford High School, and getting some of these people again.
We need to get her. We have.
Yeah.
We need her on our show.
Yeah. And it's going to do this.
Time to mobilize.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's time to mobilize. Just quickly again, 888-304-4401, because I know people have things to say, so please call in. I want to kind of pivot a little because, you know, as times have changed and as we evolve from an education school, public school system, charter school system, we talk about choice, right? Choices that are available. So the change with now these charter schools, what do you see as the biggest either opportunity, or is it a good opportunity, bad opportunity? Like, what are your thoughts about charter between public and public school?
I started my teaching career at Pocono Mountain Charter School. That was my very first teaching job out of ESU. They closed the year after I was there.
Mhm.
The problem, I think, from where I sit, and how I see it, I think there does need to be choice because charter schools can be smaller schools that are specialized, that cater to a specific, you know, whether it's the theater and the arts, whatever
Right.
sciences. But the problem is the way the system is set up, it pits the charter schools against the public schools,
agree.
so that cooperation
Yeah.
can't be there.
Mhm.
Because if we can find a way to have a system where we can have like some smaller specialized charter schools that are in cooperation and working with the public schools,
Mhm.
we're gonna change the whole face of education.
That's a great way to look at it, because I think that's the opportunity, again, going back on working together
Right.
instead of against each other.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it is about the students, it is about the kids,
Right.
it's about them growing up and being the best they can. And like, what are your thoughts?
I know nothing
About
about charter schools
right.
in that sense. I mean, honestly, I'll be honest, it was just a job that people a lot of times didn't want to take, you know, just because of the fact that public school, you have protection, you know, you have tenure and different things of that nature.
Make more money.
Yes, you make more money. So as far as the charter school as an option to work, a lot of people didn't take that option because they knew you're not necessarily protected. You know,
Right.
3 years after teaching, you get tenure. You know,
Right.
after you get tenure, you know, there's a lot, you know, that, you know, there's a process that you have to go through before they can say, you know, you got to find a new place to be, you know,
Mhm.
so it's, as far as what takes place, I believe school choice is important. I've always believed that. It might not be the place for your child.
Right.
You need to be able to have a place to look to that says, you know what, this works better for my family.
Mhm.
This works better for my child's needs. Public school might not be meeting your child's needs. So the availability to have another option that doesn't cost you,
Mhm.
I think is something that is worth, you know, investing in.
Investing.
So I feel like it's something that we should have. I think that there always should be an option. Everything doesn't fit everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have those options, and I think that it works.
But I think the school boards have made it very clear that they don't support it. Because I know I got into education, and that was one of my focuses, that I wanted to have a charter school. And I even marketed. I went to Northampton. This was before I was an adjunct there. I went to ESU, and I just was shopping around the idea of like ESU prep, where we would have a charter school connected to ESU.
Mhm.
That
It's a
and,
good
and
idea.
nobody wanted to talk to me though.
Wow.
The
I
school
did-
boards you're talking.
No, the
Just
school,
no-
the colleges,
the colleges.
because they're not going. They don't want to have that fight with the school board.
Ah.
They don't want to get into it. I
That's
mean,
why
I
we-
did
that's
like
why we
this
need
whole
money.
That's what
position
I'm saying.
paper.
We need
Because
money.
of the
Yeah,
Yeah,
we need
the
money.
right? Yeah, but the thing is, though, and I mean, if it's only about the students, right?
Why not?
Then because you know that you're not serving everybody,
Right.
let somebody do it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but that's not the reality. So yeah.
I feel sometimes, I think about education and, when I grew up and, everybody's like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be this. That was the biggest thing, right? I want to be a teacher. Your parents want you to be a lawyer or a doctor, whatever the case may be. Today, the industry has changed drastically. And again, I only have 11 nieces and nephews, no children of my own, but I feel like when I think about education today and how to prepare children for the future,
Yes.
you need to have some specialized,
Oh my goodness.
because we had electives, right? You have your arithmetic and your English and what have you. I don't know if anything's changed today with high school and charter schools, but I agree from a charter school perspective, I think it's very personalized in the sense that it gives students an opportunity to kind of almost work closer to a potential field that they might want, more life experience.
Right. Well, the thing is, though, and I always tell my kids, don't go home and tell your mom I said this. But there is no adult in the lives of most of these high school students, right, that can give them any real direction in terms of a career, because the technologies and
Right.
the fields that are going to be open haven't even been created
Created
yet.
yet.
So while we're sitting here still doing the same way of teaching them, we need to be making them more generalist.
Yeah.
It's not
The
about
life skills.
right the
Mhm.
life skills. The kids, and one of the things,
And push trades, please.
right,
Yes.
hello. But
Yes.
one of the things that makes me crazy, and I honestly, I think we need to stop telling children, I just want you to be happy. No, because you know what happens now, nobody can cope.
Happiness
As soon as they
doesn't
don't-
pay bills.
As soon as they don't get something they like, they want to
They
have
want
a
to
fight.
fight.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not,
I
you know,
quit.
right.
I don't wanna do
I
that.
never said, and it's funny, and it changed in parenting. I think like
Yeah.
when I was growing up, if you said to my mom, what do you want? They wanted us to make money. They wanted us to be able to sustain ourselves.
Right.
So by teaching us that focus,
Right.
we learned to pivot when we needed to pivot. We learned to take the
Mhm.
rejection. We learned those life lessons that more so guaranteed
Mhm.
our, success or
So-
longevity, right? The kids now, as soon as they're not happy, they want to walk away.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
They have no
handle it.
coping mechanisms.
No, they can't handle it.
No,
Mhm.
That's
and-
that's
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 the
where I
participation trophy world.
yeah, right.
Everybody
Sometimes you
gets one.
lose, right? Hey,
You can't win all the time. You can't. It doesn't work that way.
So there's some history, some things that we can take from, earlier years of education to now we have to incorporate things that are more progressive,
Yes.
in life. And, to your point, life lessons, life experiences, and to your, I mean, life is hard,
Hello.
and to your point, kids can't, you can't just give them everything because they're going to sit there and think that everything is just owed to them, which we do see that today,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
We've changed the way we kind of, the kids need to grow and they need to understand there's responsibilities. And yeah, you're not always going to be happy in your job, or your career, you chose this career path, but no, if Monday through Friday, you're not happy, but next week you might be.
Right.
Like you have to just
Stick with it.
understand how do you cope with it and stick with it.
But right, and also, like with my kids, it wasn't about you always have to be happy, but if you are in a situation that is really just going against the grain of your nature and who you are, it's okay to make that change.
Right,
Right,
absolutely.
but you have to, but we want to do it for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call the lady tomorrow and ask her if she can see. No, let
Oh,
them
my
figure it out.
Lord. Oh, we got a caller coming in. Hello, this is the sistership. Who do we have on? Hey, Jane, Miss Spicy. How you doing, Jane? What do you have for us, Jane? You're on live with us. Awesome. What do you have? A question, comment?
I do have a question. First, I want to thank all the panel. It's a very ongoing fight to keep our kids straight, to keep them safe, and accolades to the teachers. Fantastic job they've done in a very hard situation that we're all in. So
Absolutely.
my question is this: I noticed the East Stratford School District does not follow a dress code any longer. Can the teachers who have taught, can you tell me, have you seen a different dynamic in the kids from when they had to be in uniform versus not? And how do you think that affects their learning? Do you think it affects the possibility of learning less or more if they're forced to wear a uniform?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't.
Thank you, Jane.
Can't really say I paid attention to that because I shouldn't say that. I taught life skills. And so my students are extremely compliant. They're extremely compliant. They want to follow the rules. That was what I taught last year. They want to follow the rules and they want to make sure they're doing the right things. I honestly, for me, I believe that you have to learn how to follow rules. That's just a part of life. Then it turns into the expression of my baby can't express himself.
Right.
He
We got
can't
another
wear,
caller. Hello.
this Wu-Tang t-shirt.
We got another caller. Hello. This is the sistership. Who do we have?
Hey, this is Darren. I have a question. I'm sorry if I didn't catch a lot of the show, but I do have a question with respect to critical race theory because I think that that's getting a lot of traction in curriculums, and just wanted to know the panel's thoughts around that subject because it's causing a lot of concern. Some may think on it or
Critical race theory is not being taught. Critical race theory is a post-secondary theory, and it's not something that is utilized in any curriculum in any Pennsylvania standards or anything. So what this is smoke and mirrors. It's people who don't want to even think about diversity in any way. Critical race theory, honestly, in my opinion, is not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's also something we're not doing. And there's a lot more to it. It's very involved. And if people really took the time to really delve into it, they really would see that it's a very layered concept. There's a lot to it, but it's
Go ahead,
not
go ahead.
something that's being taught in any level. And that's the whole thing that people don't realize. They're just bringing it in to one.
We're here. Hello. This is the sistership. Oh, we're getting calls upon calls upon calls. Who do we have on the line?
This is Mama C calling.
Oh, hey. So we're gonna go back to what they're asking, but
Yeah,
we're
we're
gonna
gonna go
try to
back.
get all the callers in, and then we can kind of
Go back to
Go back to
go
the
back to
question.
everything.
Okay.
As they call in, we gotta answer it and keep it moving, and then we'll kind of go back to everybody's
Okay.
question.
Okay.
All right, Mama C.
C.
I just want to make one quick comment. I think that until we all learn how to follow, all these folks out here who want to be leaders, you can never be a good leader until you learn how to be a good follower.
All right.
End of story.
Mm.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Mama C.
You're right, yeah. There's too many generals
So we'll have
the critical race theory, just
Right.
to piggyback on what Trinae was saying. Interestingly enough, because I'm working on my PhD at ESU, and in yesterday's
Come on,
class, we actually talked about it. So she just introduced it, and then we have a paper to write. But I mean, so it's interesting that it is, you're right. It's not being taught at the lower levels, but if they're like indoctrinating and getting the teachers and the educators and the superintendents in on it, maybe this is one of the ways, the path to the change.
So people, that it's a misconception, it's misunderstood. It's something that people are saying is being used, like DEI is being used as a buffer, or or shadowing it, and it's not what's happening. And that's the problem, that it's misunderstanding. And so it's something that people have this heightened, obsession, I want to say a little bit with, and it's not necessarily what's happening, because that's not what we're doing at our level, and I don't think anybody else is doing it.
It's a deliberate effort to mislead,
Right.
to misinform people, because what's happening is, we're trying to address issues of diversity, equity, inclusiveness, or as PSP says, belonging.
Yeah.
and John's got his last thoughts.
CRT is not that at all. It's a reference system where race is used as an examining history and cultural development, which is a totally different thing.
Yes.
What we're talking about here. DEI is totally
Completely different.
I have to say thank you so much from the Sistership Network.
Thank you.
Amazing
Thank you.
dialogue.
Mhm.
I hope the listeners take heed. It's important to get involved. It's important to have good leadership, diverse leadership in place, and it's important for parents and students to have a voice.
Yes.
With that
To be
said,
involved.
Start
and to
going
be
out.
involved.
Get involved.
Be
To the
involved.
board. Yeah.
Come to the board meetings,
Yes.
get involved.
Show up. Show up.
Show up. With that said, thank you all for joining us today. Just quickly, we want to thank our sponsor, We Share Corp. Please locate them. They're in East Stroudsburg. They have a lot of services available. Please make sure you reach out to them. Again, We Share Corp as the Sistership sponsorship.
And we have
Spot-
a vending event on the 23rd.
And we have an vending
October
event October 23rd at We Share Corp. Any vendors, please reach out to Steph-Iyer at thesistership.com or Tiffany Co. at thesistership.com. I had to figure out which one it was. But thank you, Trinae, Rhonda, oh my God, John, amazing. You guys were amazing. And we hope to have you guys back because there's plenty
Thank you
more we
for
can
having
talk
us.
about.
Lots to talk about.
Yes,
Yes,
lots to
yes.
talk about. We talk about this, we talk about that, we talk about a lot. So with that said, thank you for joining the Sistership every Sunday right here on Genesis Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
I want a sister shit.
We got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. Ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about
Come on,
it.
John, shimmy your shoulders.
That was good.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Thank
We on
you.
the sister
Got a
ship.
little food here, so
We
please
on
take some
sister
food,
ship.
some crab
Who did
cakes,
you-
and
who
some
did
stuffed
the,
mushrooms.
Oh my God,
Who's
what
rapping?
an amazing
Who's rapping?
show.
Oh,
thank you.
You ladies and
She's
John,
from up here,
oh
but
my
she lives in
God.
North Carolina,
Oh,
so
wow.
she substituted the theme
Amazing
song.
show.
Yep,
We have to have you guys back.
yep, that was really good. That was good. I
We
like
have to
that.
have you guys
Yeah,
back.
that was good.
We do. We got
That was really good. Yep. So we're looking into having the kids,
The kids show in
take
October.
over, like some
That
kids
would be
come
nice.
That would.
come up and take over and talk about their feelings. So it's interesting that you read that because I'm like,
That's
Oh,
perfect. That was a segue right into it.
right. So my head was like,
Yeah.
We would love for them to address the board right on our show.
Ooh.
So
They're gonna be on, I think, I have to
What day, hold
That
on, let
was
me look at my,
interesting.
look at the
Yeah.
planning page, find out what we're
Right,
having.
right.
Yeah, our meeting is the 19th.
Okay, so hold on.
Trinae, does East Stroudsburg do theirs online as well?
Yeah.
yeah.
They do that.
If I go to
Yeah,
ESAD
this
website,
Wednesday,
I can find
Strasbourg.
them.
This
We
Wednesday,
had our
Strasbourg.
education meeting
Okay.
last week. It went very well. Because we addressed a lot of. Were you on? I think I saw you on. Maybe.
I was at the
So
committee,
there's
the
some stuffed
education
Yeah, that
mushrooms,
was-
there's some
yeah.
shrimp, there's some
Wait,
crab
wait,
cakes.
October
Please
17th
have something to eat.
is our kid
Don't go
show.
out here without having something to
Listen,
eat.
And when
Gonna
support
tell this
people.
one.
Our board meeting, East Stroudsburg is.
Watermelons, all right.
I can
Please
hold
have
on.
This is a
something to
free to the
This is
board meeting.
everybody's-
event.
Well, I'm in East Stroudsburg.
Oh, you're in
Not
East
Stroudsburg.
Stroudsburg.
Yeah.
Stroudsburg.
Our board meeting is the 20th.
So this is right before the,
I already told John that I was going to,
Oh, yeah, that is so good. I like,
Everybody wants to
um,
go.
and
see
the
it.
crab cakes.
Right?
She kills me with that.
Seriously.
Thank you.
I was checking out your shoes and I'm like, oh man, look at, I was like, I'm starting, look, I got the animal print thing going on today.
So I had to get some good teacher
Woo,
shoes. I'm on the
Lord.
road during the day.
Yeah. Are you good?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's a memorial, I mean,
if we can get,
ecumenical service that, Park Hill
Uh,
Is
on
what
their
else?
property. For 9/11,
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Today?
4 o'clock.
Where's that at?
She said, if you know anybody else that can come on, I was like, I got you, I got
I
you.
know, I'm like,
No,
I
no,
want it to be just,
I know what-
it's always like the
I was like, I got the
most.
most, I got the perfect person to
I
come.
I was like, honey, this is not about, I need just real people doing the work.
Yes,
And we're
yes.
talking.
I know where that's at.
Well, it's funny, the critical race theory, that was, that was my husband calling in.
I always,
Oh,
oh,
he's trying to.
because when I
Yeah,
talked
that
to my
was-
daughter, and it's like, you know, I had a
You
hard
know,
time with
he's-
stuff.
he's-
The thing that I like
And she
about
kept saying,
Dr. Mary
maybe this is
I
good.
know
Like I said, no, because I know somebody.
Right, I know somebody.
She walked right in, got a job, been the job. Now she- I said,
She's-
I don't know what the
She
situation
brings
is.
it up
I
first
hear
because
people
when
say
it's
that,
happened,
though.
people
You know, like,
get
but you know what?
upset.
It's really not a
And
black
people
thing
become
because,
defensive.
remember
Right.
Jillian?
They become
Yeah,
defensive.
she struggled, so she had to suffer.
Guys
Yeah,
are
she did.
open and vocal
Yeah,
and a
she did.
part of the solution, not
But,
part
you
of
know,
the
like I
problem.
said, so I got
Maybe
that,
like
and,
there's like
so now I'm
60
back,
fucking at the Mouse Trumpers. and
No, I'm
there's only
actually-
5 or 6 of us.
I'm
but
working
we all
on
get up
my
and say
principal cert.
something.
from
Yes.
Eastern
So
University.
that's what I've been
Okay.
doing.
And then doing the PhD, and I'm in the PhD program at the same time,
So
so
I'm
I'm,
doing a whole lot.
Rhonda, my husband wants to be an adjunct. He's been saying this for a while. He wants to know how he could do that. So whenever you get
I
a
have
chance.
campaign, huh?
I finished mine in May, my cert.
Yeah, see, well, but that's what, cause ESU, Dr. Holman was like, well, you can do the PhD and get your principal cert at the same time, but this is the problem, here's the problem. I have to, because I already have the masters,
Yeah.
I have to wait for specific classes to be available, and then after I.
And they all go right